Hi everybody, today I want to talk about this idea of when you're learning English, about knowing and not knowing. Now, almost everyone who has been unsuccessful in learning English complains repeatedly that it doesn't matter what they do, they just can't seem to stuff those English words into their brain. And so they can't remember them. There's a point about learning language that I absolutely must stress, which is when you're learning English, your goal absolutely is not to accumulate vocabulary, nor is it to analyze grammar. If, when you're learning English, you put all your attention on remembering words or analyzing grammar, I can assure you that you will feel the learning process is very difficult. Making the accumulation of vocabulary your main goal is also a major mistake. Of course, the more vocabulary and lexical units you have, the better able you're going to be to communicate very richly in English. But directly trying to remember individual words is not the way to build your vocabulary. To say that in a different way, do not confuse your learning method with the result that you want to achieve. Using vocab learning as your main method also brings with it an awful side effect, which is using the ability to translate as the evidence that you have learned something. What do I mean by that? Well, many people believe that only when they can translate Chinese words into English do they really know the English words. Or when they see an English word, they think that only if they can translate that word into Chinese do they actually know it. Now, this again is a really big mistake. When you're learning English, the first milestone that shows you're learning is that when you hear English, in your belly you have a picture which pops up or a feeling. Now, all of your being has the sense that you understand the meaning. For example, when you hear green, inside your mind you see, this is the correct response that your brain needs to make. Whether or not you can hear green and immediately translate that into Chinese is not an important goal. Here I'm using the single word green as an example, but the logic's the same for lexical units. When you hear a lexical unit, you should have images and feelings inside your mind, and these reflect the meaning that's being communicated, not some translation into Chinese. The second milestone for knowing is that when you want to communicate what's in your mind, you're able to directly pull out English words and lexical units to say what you need to say. For example, you have that funny, rumbling, uncomfortable feeling in your stomach, so you immediately say, I'm hungry, or I want to eat something, or food. It doesn't matter which word or lexical unit you choose to say, your conversation partner will understand what you mean. Now, you must remember something very important here. When you start speaking, it's very possible that you'll only be able to use half a lexical unit, or something that isn't quite what you really mean, but it's close. And this is because your brain still hasn't laid down the tracks needed to remember everything. What's important, of course, is that you've started to use English, and this is from your mind directly to your mouth. It's not from Chinese to English. After you've passed the second milestone for knowing, and you've communicated in English many times, both listening and speaking, you'll naturally start to know how to translate certain English phrases into Chinese. And here I stress again, the ability to translate accurately absolutely requires that you have first passed through stages 1 and 2. The ability to translate absolutely is not the first milestone of knowing English. If you insist on using the ability to translate as your standard of improvement, this is going to cause lots of discomfort and frustration. Remember, the sign that you know English is, firstly, that you hear English in your mind, and in your mind you know what it means. Then it's you feel in your mind what you want to communicate, and you can say it in English. Next, it's you hear English and you can find the right Chinese words to translate the meaning. And finally, it's you think of or hear Chinese, and you can directly translate that into English. And as far as a Chinese native speaker is concerned, the hardest stage is to translate from Chinese into English. So rather than all the pain, just start with crawling and then walking, and finally you'll be able to fly. Wishing you all the best in your learning.